Welcome, everyone. First of all, I want to thank you all for spending your valuable time with us. Before I get started, I did want to hit one housekeeping topic, and that is we work really hard to bring great speakers like Stacy and Peter together today. And if you could please provide your input to the session feedback forums, that way we can continuously improve the content that we're able to deliver for you. And so obviously this is session 820, Reinventing Customer Engagement with Experience-Driven Commerce, how McGraw-Hill McGraw-Hill Education took on digital learning in one. And so before I begin, I'd like to introduce myself and my co-presenter. So I'm Errol Denger. I'm the head of commerce strategy for Adobe. I'm joined today by Stacy Hansbury, who's the VP of Digital Channels and Customer Experience for McGraw-Hill Education. And finally, Peter Lukomskyj, and he is the VP of Product for Elastic Path Software. So for those of you that were in yesterday's main session, as Brad Rancher said, reinvention is a journey. And if you also heard Lori from Coca-Cola say, you can't rest on your last innovation. You always need to look for the next big thing because you need to surprise your customers. And so to achieve this, we need to employ a systematic approach to innovation. So I'm going to start by covering a systematic approach to innovation, talk a little bit about the key trends and business drivers. Stacy is then going to talk about how McGraw-Hill Education employed a systematic approach to innovation to transform the education industry. And finally, Peter is going to talk a little bit about experience-driven commerce and the necessary systems of engagement and commerce platforms that will enable you to drive a similar transformation. So for those of you that have read Seth Godin's Purple Cow, this is actually a great book, but it's based on the premise that today, in order to stand out amongst all of the competition, you must be truly remarkable. And so it's about business transformation by being remarkable. And in the past, this was achieved by building a great brand platform and continuing to build upon that. However, in the last decade or half decade, this has become even harder. Regardless of what industry you're in or competitive arena, so again, a competitive arena is not just the vertical you play in, but the broader set of forces that are impacting your industry. We're seeing a set of forces that are continuously disrupting you. The first one is creative destruction, or Schumpeter's scale, is continuing to accelerate. And basically, it's eroding your competitive advantage more rapidly than ever before. The second is we look at fast followers, and this is probably the most worrisome trend. And if you look at number 2 and number 3 together, it's easier to start up a new company today than ever before. You have new access to capital. You have easier access to business systems through cloud-based delivery models. Even the sub-assemblies and the chassis or the components that you need to create new products can be either sourced directly from China or printed in the back room on a 3D printer. And obviously, in today's flat economy, we're seeing increased deregulation and accelerated competition coming from new markets that you never even looked at. So we need to respond. Let's take a look at a few of those forces of continuous disruption. So for those of you that aren't concerned about Amazon, you might think that you have a unique niche. Amazon has 200 million products. I'd be concerned. Moreover, Alibaba, and as a commerce guy, I hate to confess that I have in fact purchased from Alibaba. I had to give it a try, and it was an absolutely wonderful experience. I don't even think I was able to hit the buy button before I got the first email asking me how my experience was. It told me where the product was. It asked for feedback on the supplier, and it continuously created a dialogue. Well, Alibaba has 1 million suppliers, and they're now taking those global. So let's talk about Amazon a moment. They have about 115, 120 distribution centers worldwide, but even Amazon is going to be disrupted. And again, by whom? By Uber. So another company called Deliv, they're a delivery specialist, they're able to deliver same day, typically in under 2 hours, for about $5 an order within urban and suburban areas. So if I were Amazon and I were looking at my competition, brick and mortar retail with thousands of stores who can deliver for $5, I'd be concerned. Uber's not yet in that market, but I guarantee you they soon will be. Then finally, we look at the bottom left at Zara Inditex. And this is just a fascinating model because they're completely transforming the supply chain in general. So as you look at fast fashion, your typical lead cycles are 6 to 9 months. Zara's lead time from sourcing to delivery is 2.5 weeks. It's pretty impressive. What's even more important, and so what does that mean? They basically FedEx and airdrop, they're not airdrop, but airship the products to the stores. And you'd think, wow, that's really expensive. But the thing is, they only mark down 15% of their merchandise in an industry or space that marks down 40 to 50%. So what they take on shipping, they lose on shipping, they regain in margins. This is the world that we operate in. So for those of you that have read Eric Ries' Lean Startup or Rita McGrath's The End of Competitive Advantage, both authors come at this from completely different approaches, but very fascinating. Let me just talk about Rita McGrath. And this, it's interesting if you just want to read. HBR did a rewrite of her book, I think 2 years ago. If you Google it, you can pull up the brief. But basically, she talks about what's called short cycle innovation. And the concept, first and foremost, that, and I'll digress a moment, when you look at today's innovations, 97.8% of the value of that innovation goes to imitators. So now let's bring it back to Rita McGrath. What she's saying is that fast followers with leaner business models that are specifically designed to copy, or your competitors are looking at what's working for you, and they're looking at how do I replicate and take away this competitive advantage. So basically what she's saying is there's no such thing as a sustainable, differentiated advantage. It's merely a transient advantage that begins to erode within months. And so as I said, in this world, we need a fundamentally different approach to operating and business innovation. And so really what this forces us to do is, first of all, rethink our business cycle. I'm sure all of you have seen Jeffrey Moore's customer adoption lifecycle, but this also aligns with the way many companies manage their brand. So instead of the customer adoption, what you would see across the axis is introduce, grow, maturity, and decline. Those are the 4 standard phases of how we manage our products. However, the reality is that it looks more like this. I mean, let's look at iPhone, or Apple's iPhone. You know, as soon as the next version goes out, is released, it doesn't dip like a bell. It basically falls off a cliff. Who here is going to go buy an Apple iPhone 3? None of you, right? Even though it's inexpensive, it's just the reality. Or who's going to go out and get, last year's jeans or outdated fashion. And so as we think about the implications to how we operate, we need a much different approach. And so the systematic approach requires an iterative innovation methodology. So again, as you're innovating, continuously, again, even when you roll something out, you need to think about what is that next big thing? What should we test? How do we reinvent ourselves or pivot? So at all phases, not just maturity, during the actual innovation cycle itself, as well as during the maturity phase, you want to continuously iterate and test new theories. And so when you look at this, how do we achieve this? I'll say the first thing is this requires both an organizational, a change in organizational mindset. It requires leaner processes. It requires a fundamentally new approach. And it also requires a new platform that empowers businesses and gives you the flexibility to achieve your business objectives. And we chose this image because, if one of those four is missing, you cannot be the lead, out ahead of your organization and pulling that, 100,000 ton train behind you. You need all cylinders to fire together. And so let's look at really what this systematic approach is about. And so first of all, it's a 7-step process. For those of you that are familiar with design thinking, this is very familiar to the design thinking methodology or Agile or Iterative optimization methodology. We did post a blog on Adobe.com, so we have a lot more detail behind this. But before I introduce the model, I just want to talk a little bit about, so first of all, the 2 quotes. It is absolutely impossible for you to see every trend and every shift in customer behavior. And so it's not about missing the trend, it's about how quickly you can respond and how quickly you can test your hypotheses in real-world conditions. And in my mind, love or hate Jeff Bezos, but no company and no individual knows this better than Jeff Bezos. And we all took a step back. Why did he buy the Washington Post? Pretty odd pairing, right, from retail into print. But as you actually look at it, it makes a lot of sense. This is about understanding consumer behavior and delivering a service that delights readers. And so the way Jeff Bezos thinks about it is the path to innovation and invention is continuous testing of hypotheses. And it's quite frankly, get those into a pilot environment, test those, and then roll it out. So the 7 steps, the first one is analyze. You need to continuously analyze your customers. And again, not just quantitative data. Obviously, Adobe Analytics will provide incredible, as you saw, customer insights. And with things like anomaly detection and insights, you can now look at positive and negative impacts on the customer journey and your conversion, et cetera. But you also need to factor in qualitative insights to really understand some of the why. So as you start to see shifting behavior, and of course look at your competitors, your arena, and as you start to see these problems, they become fairly broad. So as you define the problem, most business challenges can be decomposed in their constituent elements. So break up the problem into something that you can solve, and ideate. And so ideation is not just about brainstorming, it's about creating a set of business hypotheses that you can execute on. So even the best ideas may simply be too far-fetched to commercially execute. And so, make sure that the ideation phase, think broad, but then narrow it down to something that you can actually move to the next phase and prototype. So prototype quickly, prototype everything, and fail fast. If the prototype doesn't work, what can we take away from that? So testing, again, another concept out there is iterative optimization methodology, and Adobe's written quite a bit on this in the target arena. So there's a whole methodology of how do you test. But as you think about the testing and evaluation, sometimes you want to go out and you want to test something radical. So to understand, is there a propensity or is there customer interest in this type of capability? And that's great. But then when you start thinking about, okay, I had a successful test, you now need to go back and look at the effect of implementation at scale. If you have 1,000 stores or 2,000 stores, a pilot of 1 might give you a really fun indicator. It might drive some headlines, but you need to think about the commercial implication, the impact on margin erosion, the impact on customer behavior in actually evaluating, was a test successful? And so now once you've been able to evaluate that test, we then move to implement. And again, as I said, the strategy is to utilize multiple simultaneous tests at once and innovations at once, recognizing that each innovation is nothing more than a transient advantage. But when you're simultaneously rolling out 4 and 5 transient advantages at once, this becomes the new platform for differentiation. And if you look at everyone from Coca-Cola to Zara rolling out, or Inditex rolling out new fashion every 2 weeks, to Lululemon, I mean, this is really what new brands are built upon. So with that, I can't think of a better example of, first of all, the disruptive forces reshaping an industry, as well as completely transforming from a previous methodology of a textbook-driven arena to one that's highly personalized, componentized, and digital, and continuously reinventing themselves. So I'd like to introduce Stacy Hansbury to take us through how McGraw-Hill Education utilized this methodology and transformed their business.
Thanks, Errol. So I'm really excited to be here with you guys to talk about the things that have been going on at McGraw-Hill Education. And for me, over the last couple of days, it's been really interesting as I've met people and they've said, oh, McGraw-Hill Education, you guys are a textbook company, right? Well, yeah. For 106 years, that's been our business model. We're a traditional publisher. And most of you probably think of us when you were in school and you saw the little red cube up on your book and you paid a lot of money in college for your books when you wanted to do other things with that money, right? But as most of you are aware, there's a lot of change and disruption in education right now. And it's really, thinking about the digital evolution, and it's having a tremendous impact on our business, as you can imagine. And we could sit by, actually, let me show you a little bit first, and then we can talk about reinvention. But, the example I'd give you is, let's think about a traditional, course in higher education. Back years ago, I know when I was in school, an instructor built their course around a textbook. So they picked a particular textbook and they built that course and they told students, okay, go to the bookstore and you buy your books and you're off and running. Maybe over time they added some supplemental materials through whether it be Harvard Business Review cases or other things. And then years ago we were able to access that book, in a digital format, in an ebook format. But it was really, again, still based on that book. Where we are today is we're actually seeing areas where we're 100% digital. And that's not just digital in terms of getting access to that book online, but it's really granular pieces of content. You think about that classroom today with online learning and a lot more remote collaboration, and students are used to interacting with that in a digital way. And so gone is the world of traditional textbook, and everything's shifting more toward digital and getting access to content in real time and being able to use that. And as we think more into the future, we really see that continuing to grow. So we could have sat by and thought about, staying in that traditional textbook business, but we knew as a company we had to reinvent ourselves, right? If we were going to stay, I think I saw a quote in a session I was in earlier that said 40% of the Fortune 500 companies will be gone within the next 10 years. And that's amazing, and to me it really resonated when I thought about this example, because we could have sat by and said, yeah, well, we'll continue to try to find other revenue sources through textbooks, but we knew we had to reinvent ourselves. And it wasn't just reinventing, for my portion of what I do from an e-commerce perspective, it was really reinventing the whole company. And making this shift from people perceiving us as that textbook company, like everyone's been saying to me this week, to really that digital learning company or learning sciences company. The good news is that red cube that I talked about earlier, all the studies we've done, it's got a lot of brand loyalty. So people recognize it, and what you may not know, a couple interesting facts, our brand in the education space is the most recognized brand in the world. So we are not the #1 education company, but we're the most recognized brand because of that red cube. The other thing I was sharing with some people at lunch today, we also, more of our revenue now comes from digital than it does from traditional print textbooks. So the change is here. So when we embarked on this journey, the portion of the reinvention from a company perspective that I've been responsible for is our e-commerce platform and our experience. And so the first thing we did, like anyone else, is we sat down and said, okay, what's our vision of the experience we're trying to create? And we crafted this vision, which is a world-class singular e-commerce and digital publishing destination for finding and accessing learning solutions that deliver a personalized customer experience. And I intentionally bolded a few words here, and you'll see as we go on that these things were really important to us. So #1 is singular, finding and accessing, and this concept of personalization, again, that we'll talk a little more about. So like any good project, we spent some time listing our project goals, and the reason this was important for us is fairly large organization with lots of different components within, business units or silos. And so try to get everybody bought into the mission and the vision of what we're doing. So the first was, again, creating that single unified brand. So we speak in one McGraw-Hill Education. In the past, it's been K-12 has a brand, higher education, our professional division, really making sure we're speaking in one voice and tone, and that a lot of the design elements that you'll see in the site were really built from a company perspective and a McGraw-Hill Education and a customer-first perspective, and that they're in all of our touch points, not just from an e-commerce perspective. The second is providing a personalized e-commerce experience. So if we want to provide a single destination for our customers to come to learn about us and buy access to content, we want to make it personalized. And we'll talk a little bit more when I show you some of our personas. You can see the vast type of customers that we serve and why we need to make it's really critical to us to serve up the right information at the right time to the right person. Also, this blend of content and commerce. I've been with McGraw-Hill Education for 2 years. I spent a lot of time in retail prior to this, and I know how important content is, especially product content. In our business, product content is super important, but what's even more important is our ability to help people compare programs and products and find, thought leadership that we can demonstrate the efficacy of our products and show the learning outcomes that they drive. And that content is even, in some cases, more important than the commerce or the product piece in most days. And we'll talk more about that as well. Single account to manage the relationship makes sense. And then lastly, migrating to a set of flexible technology platforms. And that's why I'm really excited that we're partnering with Adobe and Elastic Path on this journey. So we had some challenges to overcome. I think I mentioned we have 5 business units that have really worked in silos. So if you're in K-12, you don't talk to people in higher ed because your customer's different, right? And that's kind of how they approached it. And I'm not saying we've solved all of these now, but we're making a lot of progress. But to really break down those barriers, they never actually even talked to each other. And as a result, we had different e-commerce and content systems spread all over the world. To give you an example, we had over 450 separate marketing microsites all over the world between international and US that all had a different look and feel, different content loaded. Some they might have the red cube, others didn't. They might have a different logo. So really, again, not creating that common, consistent web experience. And each site had their own set of technology and feature set. We also had to overcome this complex back office system, and I'm sure most of you know exactly what I'm talking about, right? You inherit this back office system you've got to, integrate to. So the example I'd share here is in our world, everything has an ISBN. So most of you in retail would know that as a SKU. So every book has an ISBN. And in our back office system, you take one book, let's say McConnell Macroeconomics, that's a big author in that space, and you get a new edition, every couple years. Well, every edition has a different ISBN. And the digital version of each edition has a different ISBN, right? You see where I'm going? You add on supplemental materials, it's a different ISBN. So if I went to the site and I searched McConnell Macroeconomics, I'd get 20, 25 results of essentially the same thing in different formats, different editions, but as an end user, I would have no idea which one I'm supposed to choose, right? So we made it really hard for people to find what they needed easily, and then also demonstrate the benefit of, we want to push digital first, right? It's better for the student, it's better for us. And so making sure we could tell that story. So that's been a big thing that we've had to work through. We also have customer data scattered across numerous systems. Again, because we've been in silos, there's been no sharing of that. So this concept we have now of a lifelong learner, if they're using McGraw-Hill Education products when they're in kindergarten and they're using them in college, we want to be able to help them through that journey. That hadn't existed before because we had so many systems with disparate customer data. No content management process. I think I touched on that with the microsites and no governance. We'd load information and content, we thought it looked great, and then we'd walk away. No one ever went back and looked at it. We also had no web analytics. So for me, I'm a very data-driven person. This gave me a lot of anxiety when I started because nobody could tell me what our traffic looked like, what customer feedback was. We also weren't optimized for mobile, which you can imagine in our space, especially when you talk about students in a higher education, right? They're used to doing everything on mobile. So what did we do? The first thing we did was, as we kicked off the project, was really looked at it with the customer in the center. And again, I know to most of you, you're like, of course you did that. That's what everyone should do. But this was fundamentally different. In our space, because we were a textbook company, the author and the content was king in the past, right? And students bought it because they were told they had to buy it. Well, now we're changing that experience, right? And we really have to put the customer in the center of everything we do and everything that we think about. We started by creating a customer journey and a set of personas, something that had never been done before. And we got a group of people across the organization and in those silos to put together a set of personas. This wasn't an easy task, right? I think the team wanted 20, 30 personas, and we had to try to help them focus. But I share this with you not to go into all the detail of all our personas, and there's a few more that aren't here, but really to illustrate the complexity of our business and the amount of different types of customers that we serve, right? So to give you a couple I'll pull out, you look at Juan, who's an administrator. He's a K-12 administrator. He comes to our site because he wants to learn about programs. What kind of reading programs do we offer, maybe in K-6? We offer a couple. He wants to compare them. He wants to learn about it, wants to understand the outcomes. He's not purchasing. He's just researching, and then we want to quickly find a way to get him in contact with a sales rep, right? But then maybe you've got Victoria, who's an involved elementary parent, who is me. My daughter uses a McGraw-Hill math product in 4th grade, and math is not her best subject. I want to give her more materials. I want to help supplement her learning, right? I'm willing to spend my money to help her succeed. So I want to be able to go to McGraw-Hill Education and find out about everyday math and all the other programs that go with that, games, supplemental materials to help her. And so we need to be able to serve parents like me or Victoria to help complete that transaction. So you can see those are two, they're vastly different, and there's everything in between. So we had to take all the needs of these customers and all the things that we knew about them, as well as all the things that are basic expectations in the market that we quite honestly didn't provide. So when I think about things, and I call them really antes or table stakes, that you think about things like product ratings and reviews or an easy search experience, navigation, all things that people expect, right? Especially our end users, sometimes if they're shopping on Amazon looking for our products, they expect that experience here. And so we had to take all those nuances of our customers and the different needs that they had, as well as all these things that are just, again, kind of antes into the game, and bring that together to create a new experience. So I'm thrilled and just couldn't be more proud of what our team has accomplished in a really short period of time. We launched a mobile-optimized website for our higher education division in 123 days. With that, had a dramatic improved look and feel, and if I could show you before and after, you would be mortified at what we had in market before. But had great improvements in search. So that example I told you before with the 20 products from McConnell Macroeconomics, it's actually very clean now. We've got a master product detail page that it would take you to, and you can see the differences between the different products. We also launched a new brand strategy for the organization. As a matter of fact, this week, a lot of my peers in marketing are out at South by Southwest launching that. And we're now really looking at ourselves as a learning sciences company. And I encourage you to kind of go out and Google and look at that. We've gotten a lot of press lately as a result of the new strategy and the announcements we've made. We also implemented a very focused Agile approach. Errol talked about it earlier in that life cycle. In order to do this in 123 days, we had to be very focused. And this took some time and understanding and education on the part of our partners, because we wanted everything, like anyone else. You don't want to put a site up until everything's exactly the way you want it, right? So we really had to be very thoughtful and methodical about putting a box around what it was we were going to do and what we were going to put in market, and help them understand that, look, this is not, we're just going to throw it up and walk away and launch something else in a year, but that they had our commitment to launch something, that we had a platform to learn and test and iterate on, and building that roadmap in parallel to show them when that iterative functionality was coming in. So we are doing monthly releases based on that, and so that my business partners have a very clear understanding of what features and functionality are coming at what point. We also launched a content governance process, which has been key for us. I talked about all those microsites that are out there and really starting to put that into practice, sunsetting microsites that don't make sense anymore, and then really folding those in to the overall experience, right? If we have a microsite up somewhere that talks about our reading programs, that really should be within the overall web experience and the commerce experience that we've built. And so we're finding ways to start to fold those in. And we also implemented our first phase of analytics. So we're just scratching the surface, but we're starting to continue to build on that. So since our launch, I'm pleased to say we've had over 662,000 visits to the site. The thing to me that I'm most excited about is in our ideas content section, which is a whole new section on our site, really geared towards students. We've had almost 23,000 visits to that ideas section, and a lot of it is just fun information for them, right? Dorm room recipes, things about dorm room life, but it's trying to get traffic for the students to come to the site. So I'm really excited about the amount of energy we've had on that portion. And we've also seen a 50% growth rate in our traffic from non-desktop devices, which is super exciting. So just in closing, and I'm going to turn it over to Peter here in a minute, but really, as I mentioned, getting a site stood up in 123 days, I actually never thought it was possible before, but really took that focus and that approach of really, as I said, analyzing what it was we were going to do, defining the problem, putting the box around it, as I call it, and then just putting it out there. And it's been a great platform for us to continue to iterate and test and learn. We're getting fantastic feedback, both things that are working really well that we don't want to change, and also feedback of things we want to make better. But the only way we get that feedback is to have something in market. So it's been a great process and a journey for us. So with that, I'll turn it over to Peter, who will talk a little bit about Elastic Path.
Great. Well, thank you very much, Stacy. And the future truly does belong to companies like McGraw-Hill Education, who are using systematic and iterative approaches to innovation. This fundamentally means reimagining your business, reimagining what value it is that you provide as a company, and really recasting what your mindset is, what your culture is, and really moving towards a process of continual innovation. Stacy and her team at McGraw-Hill Education are a shining example of the types of mavericks that are doing this out in companies, and certainly companies like yours and industries like yours will be seeing more and more of this. Faced with the shifting consumer behavior, faced with the disruptive technology, they saw that as an opportunity to embrace change. They saw that as a catalyst to reinvent themselves from a textbook company to a digital learning company. What I liked most was how they fundamentally challenged the whole construct of a textbook. If you think of content bound between hardcovers, curated, and provided in that format, and really reimagine that as a set of bite-sized, consumable digital slices that can be consumed in a much more natural way, that's a fundamental reinvention of an industry. They fundamentally challenged that, but they also put the learner, that user, at the center of the experience and made that content, which was always the value behind the business, searchable, contextualized, personalized, and of course, now available across all devices, not just within that paper book. This type of transformation required an incredible amount of vision, and Stacy and the team at McGraw-Hill Education are truly those types of visionaries, but it really also required technology as well. And where they chose to start was that consolidation point of the content systems and the commerce systems that existed in disparate silos all over their organization, and really chose to put that into one platform. So standalone e-commerce systems that are built to power traditional storefronts, to be honest, I would submit are yesterday's technology as well. I would say that they're yet another example of the type of inflexible applications that will fall by the wayside in this world of continual innovation. Your business doesn't need a new e-commerce solution. Whether you're in retail, whether you're in digital, whether you're in publishing, whether you're in telco, media, What you need is you need a platform for commerce innovation. You need a platform that will allow you to seamlessly weave commerce into that journey, into that customer journey that you're building. Whether that's in store, whether that's on mobile, whether that's on tablet, in wearables, or in devices that we haven't even imagined yet. In my view, commerce should never drive the experience, but commerce should always be there. It should always be there at the fingertips of the merchandisers and the marketers and all those individuals who are looking to put the perfect product in front of the right person at the right time and place, and of course at the right price. So McGraw-Hill Education truly embraced a systematic approach to innovation. Elastic Path provided the commerce innovation platform. Adobe provided the customer experience platform. And ultimately, both of these solutions perfectly complement the other elements of the Adobe Marketing Cloud that McGraw-Hill Education and our other customers have in their environments. So at this point, we'll open it up for questions. If anybody has detailed questions about Adobe or Elastic Path, we also invite you to join us at our booths in the community hall. But I'd like to open it up for questions if anybody has questions about Stacy's journey and how she led that, or if anybody has any questions for Errol or myself.